Hello everyone, just want to give you a quick rundown on the lesson that we had on Sunday here in Northampton. It was from Esther. Ezra and Nehemiah are two books that talk about the remnant of the Jews, as they're called, that went back home to Jerusalem from the captivity in Babylon. Esther takes place around about chapter 6 or 7 of Ezra and deals with those who stayed behind, those who really didn't want to go traipsing back to a place and rebuild the city and the walls, but were comfortable where they are. Mordecai, we're told, was a palace official. He served the king in the palace, and his aunt passed away along with her husband, leaving their daughter Esther an orphan. He took her in, and although they were cousins, he loved her as a father loves his daughter, and raised her. Being in the palace, he was quite privy to all that took place. Early on in his career, he overheard a plot to kill the king by his bodyguards. Warning the king was saved. And that's mentioned in the book as a little interjection. However, the main story seems to be that the king was having a party with his cronies. They all got drunk, and he decided, wouldn't it be great for everyone to see just how beautiful my wife is? So he told her to show herself to the people. Now, this wasn't just a nice look at her beautiful face. This was probably far much more, quite degrading. And the queen, quite rightly, refused. So the cronies said she's got to be banished, and you've got to write an edict to tell all the wives in this kingdom they must obey their husbands. Because if word gets around that your wife, the queen, isn't obeying you, why should our wives obey us? And the king, obviously being a hothead, did this. Later, when he calmed down, he realised, oh, I haven't got a beautiful wife anymore, or that beautiful wife. And so a message was put out again, prompted by his cronies, to get all the beautiful women in the kingdom to come along so he could select his next queen. Mordecai heard about this being around the palace and decided, well, I'll take Esther. This will be a good move, a good career move for her. And he took her along. A year after she'd been taken there, she was finally called into the presence of the king. So there must have been many people who came along in order for this Persia's Got Talent kind of competition. And as soon as he saw her, the king fell in love with her and made her queen. Around this time, he made a man by the name of Haman prime minister over all of the 127 provinces that he ruled over, and told everyone, you must bow down to this man because of his high position. Mordecai in the palace refused to do this. Now then, there was a bit of animosity here because we're told Mordecai was an Amalek. He was a descendant of Esau, an Amalekite, sorry, and he was a descendant of Esau. Esau, of course, had his birthright stolen from him by Jacob. So his descendants, the Jews, were at loggerheads with the descendants of Esau. Haman being a descendant of Esau, Mordecai being a descendant of Jacob, there was bad feeling there anyway. And now that Mordecai refused to bow down to Haman, because according to his law, he was only to bow the knee and bow down to God, Haman took exception to this and wanted to kill not only Mordecai, but as a way of being able to kill him, kill all the Jews. So he went to the king with a cock and bull story of how these people keep themselves separate, how they live by their own laws, they don't obey the king, and by the way, I'll give you 10,000 sacks of silver to use how you wish if you let me do this. So that greased the wheels a little bit, and the order was given. On hearing about this, Mordecai told Esther, now's the time you need to go to the king and tell him that your people need saving. She replied, I can't do that. No one's allowed to go in, and besides, I've not been called to go to him for 30 days. So he said those famous words, who is to say that you weren't made queen for a time such as this? He told her, don't think you'll get away with your life just because you're in the palace. You need to do something. She heard and she acted quickly, asked Mordecai to get the people together to fast and pray, and she plotted to have a banquet for the king and Haman alone. So you imagine how Haman felt about this when he came along and he was the only guest of the king and the queen. He was so full of pride and was going to go home and tell his family, and there, as he passed by after feeling so good, he saw Mordecai near the palace. So he went home, bragged to his wife, bragged to his friends about how he was the only one there, he had the ear of the king and how special he must be, and the only thing that ruined it was seeing Mordecai sitting there in the gate. So they said to him, well, why don't you just get a big pole built and have him impaled on it? He decided the next day he would go and ask the king for permission and do that very thing. That very night, the king was troubled in his sleep and he couldn't think what it is. There's something missing, something I haven't done. So he got his court officials to read through all the papers and see what is it that we've missed and haven't done. And it was brought to his attention that his life was saved by this chap Mordecai. And the king said, what have we done for him? So, well, nothing. We need to do something because of what this man had done. Around about then, Haman walked in. He was wanting to ask the king for the life of Mordecai. But before he could say anything, the king said, what can I do for the man that pleases me the most? Haman, of course, thinking, well, I was only on a banquet. I'm at this high position because of the king. It must mean me. So he gave this elaborate speech about dress him in fine robes, put him on a horse that only the king has ridden, let's parade him round town and shout about how great he is. And the king said, great, go and do that straight away for Mordecai. How humiliating. But Haman went out and did just that. He went home distressed. We're told actually the banquet he was supposed to go to the next day, the soldiers had to go and bring him to it. He was so distressed. And he went in to this banquet where the king said to Esther, what is it that you're wanting to ask me? You keep having these feasts, you want me to do something for you, what is it? I'll give it you, even up to half my kingdom. She explained about the plot to kill all of the Jews and that they were her people. So what was he going to do about it? The king was furious. Who would do this? And Esther pointed out, Haman is the enemy. The king was in a rage. He went out to try and count to 10 or whatever it is he needed to do. And in the meantime, Haman fell on the couch that the queen was on, begging for his life. The king returned, thought Haman was attacking his wife, so had the soldiers take him away and impaled him on the pole that he prepared for Mordecai. The people were saved. A feast was instituted called Purim, because which means lots, because Haman had drawn lots to see what date he would kill all of these Jews. Well, that command was rescinded. And this all took place because Esther had been raised up to do something at time such as that. And this begs the question for those of us that are following Jesus, for those of us that live our life aware of God. Why do we exist at this time in history? Why is it that we are alive now? Especially when these are just such strange times for us with the pandemic that we're still living with, where certainly in this country people are worried about getting fuel, where the food chain supplies is just worrying people. Why are we here now? Well, let's ask this question. Who do you know that was faithfully following God and isn't doing any more? Is it that you are here in order to contact them and to bring them back? Who do you know that has not accepted Jesus Christ as their Saviour and received forgiveness for their sins? Who else but you could be the one that tells them that message of salvation? Why are you here now? Why are you where you are? Even if you're in your job, it's a dead-end job, and you wonder what's the point? Who is it that is there that you are perfectly placed to talk to about Jesus, that you would never meet and no one else would ever meet, except you are there in that place now? Now, I'm not saying stay in that place. You always want to better yourself and get a different job or better circumstance. But while you are where you are, don't waste time. You could be right there because God is leading someone to you that needs you. Our life takes on more meaning when we understand that we might be existing at a time like this for a specific reason. And only you can reach those people. You're the one who has the words to help them and save them. Ezekiel talks about a watchman, and if a watchman calls out an alarm and the people pay attention to it, they're saved, of course. But if the watchman calls out an alarm that attackers are coming and people take no notice and don't prepare and they get killed, that's their own fault, not the watchman who warned them. But what if a watchman sees someone coming to attack the people and doesn't raise the alarm? We're told that they will still die in their sins, but the watchman will be held accountable because he didn't warn them. Whose soul are you the watchman over at this time? Who is it in your sphere of influence that you can talk to about Jesus? Are you going to be held accountable for them dying in their sins? The only way not to be is to tell them. You have no control over whether people will believe it and accept it and follow Jesus, but you have full control over whether you will tell them. And who's to say that you don't exist, that you weren't born for a time such as this? How important are you in getting the good news about Jesus out to those who need it? Act on it. Pray about it. Talk to people. Use whatever method you can, because now's your time. Esther was in place at the right time for that purpose. But who's to say that you're not here now, where you are, for such a time as this, to tell someone about Jesus?